Vulnerability has been the biggest thing. The catalyst also for me to really dive into it a little bit further, and it's now morphing into it's a whole movement in its own right, was the recent losses of people that I've known or that mates have known throughout the industry, but throughout agriculture, to self-harm, to taking their own life, to ending their troubles in the most dramatic way. And that indicates to me that we've missed something.
Yeah.
That a guy 3 k's down the road at 8 o'clock at night couldn't ring up somebody or just drive out the driveway and go and knock on a mate's door.
G'day. Today we're going to ask the question of, is self-care an essential ingredient in making wine? I'm Trent, and we're here on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. And we're saying here, drink more, try more, learn more. Now, when we think about the world of wine, we think about scores, critics' reviews, tasting notes, but sometimes the real story is behind the label. The decisions you need to take, the challenges no one talks about, and the people trying to hold everything together. We're pretty comfortable talking about oak acidity, flavor profiles, and tannins, etc., like that, but we don't feel that comfortable talking about mental health. So it's one of those topics that I like to tiptoe around. Industries built on resilience, pride, and pushing through find it hard to talk about these matters. So today's episode is not just about new releases of Ben Murray wines. No. It's to talk about the place, the pressure, and what happens when a winemaker makes a brave decision not to make a vintage. And because what does it mean to step back from that vintage and what's really happening behind the scenes in Australia at the moment. Thank you, Dan Eggleton from Ben Murray Wines. Thanks, been Trent. A while. As I was mentioning, it's been April 2024 since we last chatted. So yeah, you're in
just under 2 years.
Just under 2 years. Your math's better than mine.
That's it.
What have you been up to?
Great. Thank you very much for having me. It's been wonderful. And I've been watching you guys. You're nailing it. It's been an interesting near 2 years. We've seen a lot of the environment change in the Australian wine scene, particularly at boutique and small end, and maybe at the top end too. Well, there has been, hasn't there? There's been some massive amalgamations and what have you. I've been concentrating on developing further product, making some pretty big decisions around our production, and also looking after myself, but also fixing our, I suppose, inventory and realigning ourselves with our beliefs and where we want to be.
A lot of things going on, but as we do here in the wind-up, you know, it's been a while since we did the icebreaker questions. What's the most memorable wine or wine moment of 2025?
25 most memorable wine moment. Sitting with my good friend John Weeks in Adelaide. I believe it was a 1943 Madeira.
Wow. That
he had opened, and by chance we met each other at Costco. We were shopping. Costco or somewhere down there. Yeah. And he's like, Dan, you got to come past the house. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. The daughter was with me and she's going, what are we doing, Dad? I said, well, there's a 1940s Madeira to taste. And so went around to John's place and sat for 20 minutes and just reconnected and caught up. And it was just one of those moments that happened by accident. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
So,
what did it taste like? Tasting a bit of history, 1943.
Yeah, well,
this is like World War II.
He did apologise for not spending the 30 grand on the 1886 or something. Yeah. So it was super long, super syrupy, nutty, had a freshness to it that was incredible. So I'm forever grateful. We had just the one small sample because being Madeira, you can share it around for a very long time. But a complete wine. And unique. It's a very different style of wine. Yeah. So it was, pretty cool.
What's the last glass of wine that you had?
The last glass of wine that I had would have been a glass of my new release Shiraz last night at dinner.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, with a couple of people that I did a wine event with last night. So, and had a really lovely dinner at a restaurant near French's Forest. So,
next question. You look like a man that loves his food. What's one piece of food that brings you back to your childhood?
Oh, piece of child. I reckon I haven't had it for a very long time, but I loved fish finger sandwiches.
Fish finger sandwiches.
So when I was a kid,
is that the bird's eye fish fingers? And then
the little square ones.
Yeah.
White bread.
Yeah.
4 fish fingers across the bottom of the white bread with a bit of butter.
Yeah.
Shredded lettuce.
Yeah.
Mayonnaise on top.
Oh,
It was a staple diet. So I'm the eldest of several kids, and my job during school holidays while mum worked as a cleaner was to look after all the kids. And my go-to, the safety lunch, was fish finger sandwiches.
Oh, beautiful.
And they were great. So I haven't tried it. I think I'm going to have to and pair it with a Gewürztraminer or something maybe.
Yeah.
I'll have to do that. So
fantastic.
That's childhood memory.
Next one. A person passed a present they'd love to have a bottle of wine with, and what bottle would you pick?
Wow, that is a big one. Been thinking a lot lately of one of my old bosses. His name's Bruce Teeley. Those in the wine industry that remember Orlando wines from the very early 90s.
Yeah.
He was a powerful person in, I suppose, expression of passion of the wine industry. And so, Bruce Teeley's been gone several years now. And I've re-engaged with the Bruce Teeley Red Wine Club in the Barossa. The bottle of wine I'd have with Bruce would have to be an old Steingarten Riesling, I think.
Oh, yeah.
He was a great, passionate endorser of that style of wine. And, he was a great custodian of that style. So, I'd have to say an old Steingarten with Bruce Teeley would be pretty good fun.
Next one's not getting easier. If you could bottle a moment of your life like a vintage, what vintage would it be and why?
I've actually been thinking about this a bit lately too. If I could have 3 vintages, it'd be the birth date of each of my children. But I think it'd be the 1996 wedding of Daniel and Tanya Eggleton.
Yeah.
If I could do that, this lady has been with me for 32 years.
Through thick and thin?
Probably more thick than thin as I get thicker. And Tanya's just an amazing human being and somebody that I absolutely respect and love dearly. So she's had to put up with a lot and probably will have to put up with a bit more as we go along.
Yeah.
I
think my wife feels the same way.
I think your wife's amazing, mate.
Oh, is she here? No.
Do over.
A part of today's episode is talking about the new releases from Ben Murray Wines. What is it? Why have you done it? What should we be looking at?
All right. Well, this we're going to start with the first releases from Ben Murray ever of straight vineyard Mataro. They've been around as long as the region's been around. It's the backbone of fortified winemaking. Mataro, Mourvedre, Monastrell, tough as nails, very late ripening. Great colour, fantastic food wine. And I think it's, it copped the brunt, I think, of the vine pull in the 80s. And it's seeing a bit of a resurgence, a bit of a renaissance, but it's a tough one too, because it found a niche and we managed to stuff it into a lot of GSMs.
Yeah.
But it got lost. I think to have it stand up on its own as Monastrell or Mourvedre is really where this should be a shining light. And some of the resources in the Barossa are ancient and seminal. So what we've got now is a differentiation between the ranges. So our traditional white and black label is our Barossa Valley range of wines. Allows me to be able to play with diverse vineyards and create volumetrically more balanced wines.
Yeah.
The red label is a single site. So I'm looking at parts of the vineyard that are expressing unique areas, and I've focused in this release in Marananga, which is our home.
You mentioned before there's not much 100% Mataro globally.
No.
Do they do it elsewhere outside of Australia or?
I believe, in the Southern Rhone, there's Mourvedre, so it does stand up on its own. But again, in tiny production, and Spain and Portugal do have their own typicity there, but I've not seen a lot of it. I've really only can back it up on what I've seen in South Australia. What
do you think the reason why people don't really get that pull towards straight Mataro, or why haven't winemakers produced straight Mataro?
I think it's difficult. I think it's really hard to keep its colour. It ripens so late that hang out there and wait for it, thick skins, plus just simply the weight of numbers. Volumetrically, it's tiny. We're fortunate being a very small producer that it looks like a larger proportion of our production.
Economically, it doesn't make that much sense, is it, for the Mataro?
I think for a larger producer, it probably doesn't. We've got the ability to be able to be flexible and make it work. The Barossa is actually, these two wines are from the same vineyard, and it's in the heart of Marananga, but the Barossa wine is a little bit fuller of flesh, more fruit-driven. Yeah. Whereas, and that's on the deeper ground, whereas the Marananga Mataro is from the complete opposite end of the vineyard, high up on a bony ridge, really low yielding, tiny berries, intense, gravelly. Yeah.
I'm just going to take it back a step, and we're trying the Maranangas versus Barossa. Marananga as a region, what is it representing?
Yeah, Marananga has always shown to me that it has this real intensity, this depth. It's black fruited, gun smoke, cordites. There's a lot of like ironstone and deep red loams and a lot of rust, a lot of oxidative notes through there in the ground, and resilience. It is tough ground. And I see that in the fruit. It really comes through, particularly on those ridges that have more ironstone in them. That particular part of the Barossa doesn't really have any sand. And so the vine struggles, and over the last couple of years, it's had no choice. And so therefore, the intensity of flavour is there. Barossa, it allows me to be able to sort of skip around and get a bit fleshier and a bit more consumer-friendly.
Yeah. So Marananga is a bit more irony, a bit more smoky, Barossa a bit more juicier and fleshier?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing Mataro has is pepper of all sorts. I find that the Mataro from the Marananga end of that little tiny vineyard is really warm black pepper and such food wines, bone dry, really complex.
Definitely with the Marananga, it's a lot more intense in the flavour. I said before, it's kind of cranberries, but now it's kind of developed into like dark chocolate. No, it's kind of coming through now as well.
Yeah.
But what's also very prevalent on both of them is the tannin profile. Has a really kind of light, kind of not light, like kind of medium, but kind of dusty little kind of tannins, maybe that kind of red earth kind of like tannins coming through.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. And extended contact with the skins is the key. So again, part of what I've been really working towards is full polymerization of tannins. Yeah. So these are 25 and 30 days on skins.
Yeah.
So you end up with a really well broken down, supple tannin structure that goes for long. It elongates. And it also gets the salivatory glands going.
You mentioned it's a great food wine. What food would you have with this?
Whenever I've seen Mataro, for some reason, it takes me to North Africa. I see it as spices, I see it as tagines, I see it as slow-cooked lamb, slow-cooked goat, gaminess, but with those little bursts of like couscous and sultanas or raisins and things like that. Throw in some paprika, throw in some cardamom, throw in some turmeric and things like that. So I see this as an amalgam. There's a warmth, but fruit ripeness and a great balance and a payoff with the acidity as well.
You mentioned that and it all kind of makes sense now. That earth and smoke and char with like that and the tagine style.
Bizarre, that's it.
I know.
I think that's the complex I get from Mataro.
Yeah.
And it's probably not technical and there's going to be people going, you're talking out your bum. But that's what I see in my head when I taste this wine. And that's what I see when I taste the fruit in the vineyard.
Yeah. I think we mentioned before about with Marananga, I guess Barossa, but Marananga in particular is kind of getting back to the start or the basics or where you started. Like, tell us about that story.
Yeah, so when we started with Ben Murray, I walked out of a previous wine company and I went away from wines for my employment, but I kept making wine to honour the agreement with the growers. And one of those growers was the Neldner family in the middle of Marananga, and I continued to support them, take some fruit, and actually make Neil's homebrew wine because it kept him lubricated during the year. And he was a wonderful friend to my late father-in-law. And so when we decided to relaunch Ben Murray, I had a small repository of produce that I'd continued to make, and it was a Marananga Grenache and an Eden Valley Riesling. And that's where we launched our brand. And Marananga has just been that we lived there, we immersed ourselves in the community, we've got our great friends there, and there's something seminal about that being the home of this depth and this complex. And it's been a bit of the DNA of us. We do produce a Grenache from Lindok. We obviously got Eden Valley Riesling, and I've started dabbling with some fruit from out at Vinevale. That's in sand. That's really different.
Yeah.
And I've had to recalibrate my palate, which is really good fun. But Marananga, just for me, just brings me home. And a lot of that's emotional with my late father-in-law and those relationships and those feelings.
So when we think Ben Murray wines, would we be thinking Marananga?
I think as a core.
As a core?
Yeah, as a core. The offering at Marananga is, pretty much, nails to the wall, and we can spin around it from there.
Just to flip the question though, like, is it when you had the Marananga Grenache, you knew that this was Ben Murray as a product?
I think so, yeah. We could have gone anywhere, but it's about the relationships too.
Yeah. Is it parish? Is it parish or is that something else? I couldn't see it anywhere.
So we use the word parish because it goes back to the old church days.
Oh, okay.
So I describe it as a parish. Some people, the Barossa Grounds Project identified many, many different subtypes.
Yeah.
And they could be called sub-regions. It's the only sub-region in the world that's got its own wine show inside a region. It's for the church. Usually ends up with a pretty lick it up Friday night. So
church
it's good
and
fun.
wine.
That's it. The Lutherans like a drink. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I call it a parish or a sub-region. So.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay, so this was 2023, so both of them. I'm going to fast forward a bit into 2025 and talk about the story on when you chose not to make a vintage. Tell us a bit about that. And was it something that what caused you to think that I'm not going to make that vintage? Was it something that slowly built up, or was just a point or day or minute that kind of go, okay, doesn't make sense?
I suppose putting it in context, I have 2 business partners. So we converse every fortnight, have a meeting, discuss everything. At late 2024, there was a number of things that were colliding. There was the prospect of a much less than desirable vintage coming up. It's very hard conditions, drought and what have you. I was having a significant operation, having a knee replacement in late April of 2025. And so as the season started colliding, my need for rectification and a prosthetic knee and circumstances around my health and well-being, at about October, November, we drew the line and said, let's be fair to our grape growers and do it early enough. Look at our stock levels. We can get through this period without producing. And, to be brutally honest, there's been very serious conversations had about the long-term viability of Ben Murray wines. We've just got to make decisions weekly, daily, monthly, and look ourselves honestly in the face and say, are we making the wines for the sake of making them? Do we have demand? What is the reason? You've got to rationalize it. And the emotional winemaker in me goes, I've got to make wine every year.
Yeah.
So for me to go over that quantum was pretty huge. Business partners are far more rational than me. So they're from banking world. Yeah. And so they're like, well, it makes sense. Let's just do it. And the combined decision-making process has worked out to be beneficial in the end. So yeah, it's not easy to not do it when you've done it every year for nearly 30 years.
In that October-November period, how hard was it to make that decision though?
Bloody hard. It causes sleepless nights. It causes you to question where you're at. Will I forget what I do? Will I lose the passion? I came from sport, and some years I had to take nearly a year off. You wondered when you took the field again whether you'd be the same. Going into vintage 2026 has been as hard to get back up for it as it has been to leave it for a year. So the last 18 months has been a real battle to get myself right to go back into the field and do it.
Is that physically, or is it emotionally? Is it mentally?
Both, everything. Yeah. And it goes to show how we invest so deeply in what we do.
Yeah. Your heart and soul, right?
Yeah. And more. There's bits that you can't quantify in words.
Yeah. Is sometimes choosing not to make wine harder than making wine itself?
Totally. Absolutely. The desire to take every berry and turn it into something beautiful, it overrides everything else. The great thing that winemakers do, if they're left to go unabated, is blow up wine companies by producing way too much wine. So because everything's malleable, everything's a piece of art, everything's a blank canvas. Yeah. So everything's an opportunity. Yeah. We can do that with this. Why not? Yeah. Well, because you got to try and sell it someday. Yeah. If you have the luxury of making wine for fun, go for it. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's got to put food on the table, and it's got to have a reason. It's got to have an endpoint. And you do need people with really straight up and down backbone to pull up
the yin and the yang.
Very much so. So it's difficult.
Yeah. It's tough. So you mentioned that decision not to make wine was a very hard decision, but once you made that decision, though, did it feel more like failure, or did it feel more like relief?
You mourn the decision. There is a period of mourning, a period of releasing and feeling apologetic. Yeah. But after that, there was tangible relief. Again, I'm married to an amazing woman who's a child and family health nurse, and she consults privately. Yeah. And she's like, you were never up to this. Yeah. You weren't going to be able to do this and do it justice. I'd struggled through the 2024 vintage.
Yeah. So there's relief from your wife as well,
Yeah.
You need a break.
Horrible person. I'm a grumpy bastard, I can tell you. So yeah, it was at that point. It was very much around just reset yourself.
Yeah. I probably know the answer to this already, but if you kind of reflect back and you had to make that decision again, would you be making the same decision?
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And it wasn't a decision made overnight.
Yeah.
So the conversations that went into it were multidimensional.
Yeah.
So
part of the reasons for making that decision you mentioned was the financial viability and also, I guess, questioning the brand as well and the vision around Ben Murray wines. Do you think this is very specific towards Ben Murray? It's more of an industry structural problem.
It is industry, very much so. And I wouldn't know a boutique winemaker that if they were doing the right thing by their business isn't having that conversation. Honestly, I don't think it matters how successful you are. If you're not having those conversations and you're not reassessing your pathway in an ever-changing world, then you're not doing yourself or your consumers the justice. And we've got so many other entities that rely on us.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many other associated bodies and people and livelihoods and what have you that you have to take a really justified look at it, everything.
So just to drill into that question in terms of it's an industry issue, what are those industry, the why? Why? Yeah.
Yeah. It's ourselves. I touched on it earlier. Winemakers love making wine.
Yeah.
Marketers love going out and selling it and creating things. And we have done that relatively unabated without any real rules and blow off points and, you know, those checks and balances that see us today with, you know, chronic overproduction. And unfortunately, overproduction in a lot of areas that probably are better suited not to grow grapes, that are probably better suited to growing primary food products.
Yeah.
And let's go back a couple of political cycles, and there was a lot of incentives to planting broadacre vineyard.
Yeah.
A lot of people did it. A lot of corporates did it. A lot of investment funds did it.
Yeah.
That throws a lot of extra pressure into the pot of production. I think we've had a relatively false demand analysis of Australian wine globally that hasn't taken in the global demand analysis for long enough. And so when one market falls over or it declines, the rest of it tumbles. And the impact right the way down the supply chain is palpable. It's real.
Yeah.
That stuff has to get stuffed in somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so when the China crisis happened, we were already in oversupply. So the demand uptake only falsified the demand claim.
Yeah.
When it stops, it's got to go somewhere. You build a damn wall, it's going to spill over. And you can only keep catching the you know, to quote the Crowded House, the deluge in a paper cup for so long, and then it's got to spill everywhere. And that has a cascading effect on the whole industry. To that, I've been calling for leadership. Late last year, I jumped onto Australian Grape and Wine. I accepted the nomination to go onto the Small Winemakers Committee. I've wanted to see internal regulatory change, internal mechanisms for ourselves to create hurdles for ourselves to jump over and create mechanisms for questioning why we're planning it.
Not just more regulation though, right?
Not just more regulation, internal mechanisms of self-control.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough for the Bordelais and the Burgundians and those in Saint-Emilion to be ripping out thousands of hectares of vineyards, why haven't we?
Yeah. Have we made any of those changes? Because surely we've seen, you know, from the China crisis, and we thought that maybe reopening the trade, it would kind of solve some of those problems. Obviously, it hasn't, because globally, I think wine consumption has dropped.
Yeah.
We haven't made any changes?
Nothing of
significance.
The regulators are relying on the business to regulate itself. And to be honest, if I look at it, and I look at it from a, you know, maybe an Australian grape and wine hat, and I go, there's no need for it. Or there's no compelling argument, and there's no law or no rule or accepted method of operation that says, let's stop doing that.
Yeah.
It's still free market economy, so that's fine. But with that, limbs of the tree start dying. My thing is that we need to be protecting rural Australia.
Yeah.
Grapevines don't grow in cities. Wine companies aren't based in metropolitan areas, generally. If we don't, as an industry, be brave and start agreeing and driving towards a industry cultural shift, we will actually see the demise of a lot of that rural economy and those rural communities. And as a country boy, that makes me sad.
Yeah.
I want to see growth in the rural sector. I want to see opportunities in rural. I've got 3 kids. None of them are going to be back in the wine industry.
Yeah.
One's in Sydney, one's in Adelaide. My youngest one's talking about moving to Sydney and then possibly overseas and not be in the wine industry. As a 3rd-generation grape grower, 1st-generation winemaker, that could be the end of the line.
Mm.
If that's happening to, say, 10% of the industry, it's pretty sad. We need to be thinking about those things.
But those changes need to happen. It feels like it's almost analogous to you need to kind of prune the plant for it to kind of grow.
Absolutely.
Better.
And that is the equation that we need, and then put it on a framework that sees it grow in a sustainable, long-term protected manner that will see that then bear fruit in a controlled manner.
Yeah.
And everybody then can benefit. So, there's a long way to go, but, in political spheres, never let a disaster get in the road of finding good solutions.
Yeah.
And so we need to take these opportunities at the lowest ebb to just really be smart and brave.
Yeah.
For the long term.
Do you have a clear view of, I feel like this problem is kind of multifaceted in a sense.
Very complex.
And it's not just less grapes. It could be, is it different types of grapes? Is it different types of markets? Is it different type of marketing? I think
we need an approach to how, what, why, and where. Break it up into 4 columns and just start ticking off what hasn't worked. Mega irrigated, large volume production is probably not the ideal situation. Going to premium regions and expanding them because of a geographical indication is not going to be the answer. It has to be multifaceted across the board. One of my growers has done some research, and since records were being kept since 1947, he said, if you look at the data and the production, the Barossa has been in oversupply since 1948. So let's have a real think about that, and where that then equates to all those other areas of concern and all those other factors that, we probably haven't done our premium winemakers any justice with our domestic marketing. We also have questions about the duopoly in major retailing and the major retailers being able to control from paddock to plate, essentially, and that compressing market opportunity. So there's just some maturation we need. We've been going as a dry red, dry white producing nation on a global scale relatively since the 60s and 70s. It's not that long amount of time.
Yeah.
So now's time for a reset, a rethink. Let's rebrand what we do. Let's show some maturity and some leadership. And I'm hoping to be a part of that changing scene.
So I work in corporate, and one of the hardest things is to change culture. There's people and there's politics around it. How hopeful are you at the moment in terms of like these cultural shifts, mindset shifts kind of happening within the wine industry to actually start to be a bit more positive going forward?
I think at our level, at boutique level, there's about 2,000 of us in the country. I call the weight of numbers to start being part of that conversation. If you take one man, one vote, one company, one vote, as an industry body, you can outweigh a lot of things. And I think if we get endorsement and embrace of the need over and above that from both grape grower and winemaker, there should be a way to do it. What are the choices right now?
Yeah.
They're fairly limited, I reckon. And the alternative is not palatable as far as I'm concerned. We will lose the light, colour and shade of our industry if we don't make these mature changes.
Looking at the economic landscape though, like, do you see there is a viability then within as a boutique winery going forward? Totally.
Yeah, I firmly believe that there's a viability. You pull your belt in at these times. There's no new cars being bought. There's, you might reduce your production by 15 or 20%, but make it better.
Yeah.
And technology allows us to be able to go straight to people's homes and, we need introductory wines. We need larger production wines. We need easier to consume wines.
Yeah.
So people have that engagement immediate, that easy step into as they mature, as people mature and their bank balances change, let's introduce them via those easier to consume larger productions. But at the same stage, it is natural for humans to want to step into the next realm. Get inquisitive. Once a week, maybe invest a little bit more, or once a month, maybe invest a little bit more, and get some people around with a nice cut of meat and a little bit of an expensive bottle. I think there's very much a viable marketplace out there for exactly that.
Yeah. You are a thinking man. You said that, during the icebreaker, quite reflective as well. We're going to start to delve into mental health and the work that you've been doing in that space. But to do that, we should do it over a glass of Shiraz.
I believe so. I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to try the 2023 Shiraz Marananga. Okay. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, well, Shiraz, the backbone of Barossa winemaking, and unfortunately, probably over the last 20 years has been a little bit more monoculturalized, unfortunately, and probably to the detriment of the region, but it still produces such an amazing wine. And the great Rick Burge identified somewhere near 100 mesoclimates in the region of the Barossa Valley. And I always thought, wow, how do you do that? How do you find that out? But he's a far deeper thinker and far bigger brain than me. But what we find is that Shiraz is so expressive across the region. And you can see why it became very popular. It's easy to say, it's easy to get into, you can produce it at different levels, and, be that as it may, expressions of such have found a niche around the world. Marananga, Shiraz, you start ticking some pretty big boxes there with some pretty big names, and there's some high value products that's come from that region. The differential between the Barossa 2023 Shiraz and the Marananga 2023 Shiraz is a blend of 3 vineyards over a single site. The Barossa Shiraz is slightly more elevated, more fleshier. There's a little bit of sand from Gummosol in there, bit of uplift, and it makes it a lighter, more vibrant style. Still offering all those great hallmarks of richness and opulence. When you go to the Marananga, this is a low-yielding, single site, sort of in the heart of Marananga, on actually the similar soil types to the Marananga Mataro.
Yeah.
And quite bony ground, red gravel podzolics, over ironstone. And so you get that real, again, ferrous sort of characteristic to it, and bigger tannins and just all steak.
I'm sure you tried this, but I'll let you try again. But initial thoughts, the Marananga Shiraz is definitely something that I had before. I think another Marananga Shiraz you brought, it had given that vibe. It's like dark plum, it's juicy, it's powerful, but it has the acid supporting it as well. And I wrote like rust, and also the length on it keeps on going and going and going. I don't know whether it's the fruit, is the oak, is it something else? It's just has
slow winemaking, the sum of all parts.
Yeah.
Really careful handling in the vineyard, really careful handling in the winery, long, slow processes in the winemaking process, maturation in French oak only, topping, good sulfur management. We don't rack and return. I'm the only one in the winery, really.
Yeah.
So, and it's just about being gentle and allowing the wine to create layers.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that just feels indulgent. It feels like, going to Macca's and it's like a big Mac or quarter pounder, that type of feeling. But with this one, the Barossa,
take your word for that.
The Barossa, it's less dark, more purple. It's definitely, the tannins feel a bit more tighter as well with this one. But geographically, how far are these apart?
5 Ks.
5 Ks.
Yeah. And that again goes back to the Rick Burge comment. You got to drive over 2 major hills. You're driving through little sub-valleys, around corners. The breeze, the sun, the angle of the vineyard, the age of the vines all play into that.
Both delicious wines, also both a pretty good expression of different types of Shiraz from Barossa as well. So we're going to delve into mental health subject. Big blokes don't like to talk about much, and also people in the industry as well, agriculture, right? We like to put the stiff upper lip. We don't like to talk about our feelings much. So why is this subject important to you?
Number one reason for me personally was I used to bottle it up, and it made me a really ordinary person to be around. And I got 3 kids and a beautiful wife and a bunch of wonderful mates.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be emotional only after I've dived through a bottle of Shiraz.
Yeah.
That's unhealthy for everybody. For me to come to that point in my personal life, and has taken a lot of time, a lot of reflection, a lot of help from a lot of people. I think I mentioned at this table last time that Murray Craig's been a big part of that. He tapped into a mate-to-mate emotional connection years ago that took me by surprise. And as a, I wouldn't say I was the biggest, toughest footy player, but I grew up, you never sort of expose yourself.
Blokes don't talk about that stuff.
A bit of that. And it comes out as you're being gruff and rough and what have you. But, I've got to prepare that. I've got 2 boys that are getting married in 2027. They've got beautiful girls and they're going to have little kids. And these are things that start changing who you need to be a better person for yourself and make better decisions.
You being the role model as well, especially at that kind of pivotal point in their lives.
So for me to be, a good, strong father to good, strong young men was pivotal, but also then to show them that you can sort of expose yourself, break yourself down.
Vulnerability
has been the biggest thing. And unfortunately, what happens now is I cry at the drop of a hat. So it's not a bad thing, but that takes a lot of getting used to.
Yeah.
The catalyst also for me to really dive into it a little bit further, and it's now morphing into it's a whole movement in its own right, was the recent losses of people that I've known or that mates have known throughout the industry, but throughout agriculture, to self-harm, to taking their own life, to ending their troubles in the most dramatic way. And that indicates to me that we've missed something.
Yeah.
That a guy 3 k's down the road at 8 o'clock at night couldn't ring up somebody or just drive out the driveway and go and knock on a mate's door. He felt it was that point that was it. I hadn't been close to him for a while because the kids had grown in different schools and what have you, but to know the cohort around him, to know that he had lifelong mates that are still troubled by that, I felt that there's a great awareness in men's sheds, in retired chaps that can go and spend all day doing that. But if you're still farming or winemaking or operating your own businesses, you tend to spend a lot of time by yourself. That's the worst thing generally that men can do. And you bottle up your troubles and you bottle up your emotions, and then the worst can happen. I was of the belief that to take your own life used to be like, I used to believe that it was like the cheat's way out.
Yeah.
I've undertaken the local mental health first aid training as somebody that still sees a psychologist. That I don't believe I've been clinically diagnosed with depression, but you do need to have conversations that are vulnerable and better yourself. And just to undertake that was a major step forward in, Shrek said, peel back the onions. We tend to have a lot of layers in our onions.
Definitely. I've got my own layers myself. But have you seen with you opening up that more people have been able to open up as well?
I have. Soon after Nathan's passing, I was surprised by the lack of reaction by the region peak body in winemaking. Is a grape grower too. And so I thought I need to do something. My wife and I talked about it, and she said, well, why don't you, go down the pub and call up the lads and have a bit. I went, let's do a breakfast once a month. Open the doors of the winery. Doesn't cost much to fry up some bacon and eggs. And I got great support from the best little bacon maker in Tanunda, Tanunda Traditional Butchers, and the Apex Bakery. You might remember we did the Metwurst and cheese sandwich with Corey. They jumped on board and supported me, and I've got a coffee machine in the winery, so I whacked that out the table and just opened the doors up, and half a dozen people rocked up. I went, this is nice. I've done it now for 6 months. We were supposed to do one this morning, but we had this appointment, and we get to talk about this, so it's even better. The end of January, we had over 20 people from all walks of life, captains of industry, right through to regional representation, to a couple of real small grape growers, and a couple of blokes that hung around afterwards and just needed a hug. And I'm still not fully equipped with being able to deal with others, so I'm dealing with my own. But just to say you're not alone was a big thing. And to have that dialogue and that open up has been profound for me. And it's helping me deal with some things that come from my childhood. Everybody's got a back history. And there's stuff that I'm working through, but it all bubbles up when things are a bit shitty and your grapes are your world and your wine's your world, and it all comes down because you can't sell a bottle and you don't know if you're paying the rent or the mortgage next week. That's when it hits the fan and you need to have those blow-offs. And I've become a little bit more relaxed about the whole thing.
Especially being a bloke where you feel like you have to be that breadwinner, right? You have to take all that burden yourself. You can't show your feelings. It's hard
Bit of that. Yeah. It's been a real journey. This is art. Some days it doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
Whereas my wife's a trained professional in her field and she's a specialist and she goes to work. This might not look like work to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it also then gets you questioning, where are you? What are you doing? Should I be out there also driving a truck or a tractor or something for somebody? Earn and pay as you go.
Yeah.
And this is where the whole societal thing comes into it. Farmers, agricultural producers don't earn pay as you go. We've got a society that really anchors so much value on getting the weekly check. And you see it on the news, you see it from the budget and all the rest of it. And the effect on the rural sector that doesn't live like that. We get lumps. We get nothing. We get rain, we get hail, we get drought. There's no mechanism to cope with that. And unfortunately, the unbearable and unthinkable is sometimes the way that some people deal with it.
Well, I think it takes huge courage to be vulnerable in situations, and it's only when you have vulnerability that other people can open up and also share their thoughts as well. But often it's hard to see those signs. Are there certain signs that people can see or not really?
I think for everybody it's different. I think for everybody it's different. Withdrawal is a big one. But he could just be really, really busy, or she could just be really, really busy. But if they're seemingly busy when nobody else is, then it's a state of mind thing. And it's, I think withdrawal, if you just notice a change in demeanour, just wrap an arm around or, go and have a cup of tea or whatever. And sometimes you just got to ask the question, are you all right, mate? How you feeling? What's going on? And not in a way that's condescending, but certainly in one that says, I feel you, I hear you, I see you. And you don't have to tell me the ins and outs of your bank balance or anything, but if you say things are shit, let's have a yak about what bit of shit that is.
Yeah.
And it's brutal, it really is. And proud, staunch people produce beautiful things, and sometimes they don't like talking about it. So
these mateship breakfasts, have you been surprised in how it's grown?
Yeah, sort of unprepared. So Katie Spain, the wine writer, came up to the last one and she drove in, and it's not just for blokes. I'm agnostic.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own issues. So when Katie drove in she'd driven up from McLaren Vale, and we've got about a 120 metre long driveway and the cars were parked out at the driveway. So like, wow, what a turnout. And there's 20 odd people there. And I heard my wife say it yesterday afternoon. She's like, to be there when she helped make coffees because I was busily doing stuff. The barbecue caught on fire. Typical. But to be there and just to see it and have conversations with people that are captains of industry and neighbour farmers and people we've known for 30 years and what have you. She said it was just, you could see the need. And it's good. It also puts me in a place where, bloody hell, how do I keep this? And how do I keep doing it? And next it's you scramble. But I've been able to align myself with the Grab Life movement, Grab Life by the Balls, like a group of blokes out of Queensland. So it's not aligned with a religion. It's not a statistical thing. It's actually just mateship. And I reckon that really resonated with me, that we as an industry, we've distilled mateship out of our game a bit. When I first was in it 25, 30, 35 years ago, it was nothing for us all to get together and have open table conversations with the leaders of massive companies and world-renowned winemakers and, well, bozos like me trying to hang on and work out what the hell we're doing. But those guys were really keen to talk and converse. A lot of that has been taken away. And I think that's one of those key building blocks that needs to be continued to be growing back in.
We talked about the pains of 2025 and how it's affecting people. Do you think this problem I don't know whether problem's the right word, but do you think this issue around mental health is kind of growing within agriculture and winemaking?
Absolutely. If it's good enough for every AFL football side or any NRL club to have a dedicated mental health officer, we in the wine industry don't have one.
Yeah.
We're only just asking for it now in forward budget submissions.
Yeah.
Now, we've got 65, 70,000 people that are directly employed by the wine industry in a so-called $50 billion industry, of which more than half of that is coming from associated businesses. It's not about growing grapes and making wine. It's the glass suppliers, the trucking companies, the bottling halls. Nobody's looked at it. Everybody seems to think, and I'm talking to you, Canberra, everybody seems to think that every winemaker rolls around in their dungarees and the Kubras, plays golf on Wednesdays and drives a Range Rover. Well, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Most of us are out there busting our ass trying to make a living and grinding. You know, low bank balances, asset rich, cash poor.
Yeah.
That has a huge effect on how you go about your daily business and the mental health. The wine industry isn't the only one that needs help. Agriculture in Australia needs help.
Yeah, it's a great cause, and I really appreciate you being the voice as well around these mateship breakfasts. It's almost like in every kind of area you should be having your own little mateship breakfast, or mateship lunch, or mateship dinner.
Yep.
Just reaching out to your mate to say, "Are you okay?" or just having that conversation.
Well, the guys in McLaren Vale just started this. It's pretty tumultuous end to last year. Really violent, really disturbing. The guys in Clare are talking about it, jumping on it. I should imagine if there's a greater need than anywhere else in the Riverland, it's not been seen. So I suggest that those guys get around that. You know, Ash Ratcliffe, Ricatera, jump on it. It's one of those things where we have to lead the decision makers. Yeah. We own our business. We own our industry. We've got to grow with it.
This be the start of that movement, and we start to make sure that we kind of normalize some of these vulnerabilities around mental health, both men and women as well.
Absolutely. Cheers.
So, cheers to that.
Absolutely.
Going to be a bit reflective. If you could kind of like speak to your younger self, let's say 30 years younger, what would you kind of say to yourself now?
Listen more to those around you. Heed the lessons that you were taught. Before you make that next dumb move, just take a moment to think about it.
Yeah.
Again, you look at the stable elements in your life and you go, I did the right thing by clinging on for dear life to a wonderful human being that's guided me. She had every reason not to hang around, I think. But yeah, just as a kid that came from nothing, don't go bull at a gate. Just take a moment. Study the field a bit, ask a couple more questions. Probably would have saved myself a lot of pain.
Fantastic.
So,
look, we started with your wines. We finished up with people. It's probably what kind of wine kind of means as well.
Very much so.
And also definitely talking about a very kind of important subject, but we're going to start to wrap things up about the future now. Like, what excites you most now about the future?
For me, for wine industry involvement, will be being part of that change of culture. I think if we can start lifting our eyes and looking up at a future in our wine industry that has learnt its lessons on the way down, has got to the bottom, had a mature, earnest conversation with itself, and then adopts frameworks to allow us to climb that ladder again in a really, I suppose, not controlled way, but a mature way, one that's sustainable, one that doesn't go leaps and jumps ahead by a decade at a time, but actually, as we make our wine, you take it day to day. Our problem has been in the past that we go, that's a great idea, that's a 10-year plan, let's do it in 2. Well, nobody's got frameworks to cope with that. So let's actually learn from our lessons. Go forward, step by step, methodical. Good wine takes time. Let's bring that actually into how we operate our industry. What else excites me? Yeah, as I said before, I've got 2 boys getting married to 2 beautiful young women. I've got a gorgeous young girl that is my daughter, and she's 22 and she's graduating, and she'll be the first of our kids to graduate university.
Wow.
I'm so proud and so excited about where that's at. My wife's little business that she started up consulting and the changes she sees in kids and families. And for me, just looking at where I can take my learnings, my lessons and leadership and advocacy, I think I'm not doing those around me justice or even myself if I don't I suppose, talk about what I've learnt and what I've been through and those that have helped me get to this understanding. And, take the opportunity to speak about it.
I love that. I think perspective is huge. I think sometimes we're always a bit too introspective about focusing on all the bad things when there's actually a lot of good around as well.
It takes a lot to keep the demons away, mate. I can tell you that. It really does. It's hard. So
we talked about industry, we talked about yourself. For the consumer, are there any kind of big call to actions for them?
Without a doubt, I want the Australian wine industry to be prepared to talk directly to the consumer and not itself, and do that in a way that we see recognition and differentiation of producers at levels and educate the consumer on the truth in the product. It's a big one, I know, and there'll be some large makers out there that'll be horribly upset with hearing that. But I think part of the maturation of our industry will be for us to be prepared to stand by a designation on a label. The consumer can't tell the difference when they go into a retail outlet between a mega mass-produced $10 bottle and a $50 bottle of beautifully handmade wine. If it comes from the same region and the same grape variety, there's no difference. Go behind the scenes, vastly different.
Yeah.
We're relying on that consumer to do their own research. They won't. They'll buy 4 to 1. That 4 that they've bought, they might get through the first 1.5 and go, why the hell did I buy that XYZ wine from that XYZ region? I don't like it. Whereas with education, we can say, start here and then grow to here. Burgundy, I don't believe, has ever been in oversupply above Village.
Mm.
That's because they have sustained steps in qualitative parameter. Maybe that's a lesson in a free market economy, I know, shock horror, but just frameworks of education. And I think the consumer will thank us all for it in the long run. And if you make a choice to go out and you enjoy drinking $10 wine, fill your boots, go your hardest. But naturally, inquisitive consumers will step up the ladder. And I think that's a fair thing to, as a maturing industry, that's a fair thing to propose.
So this is the 2022 Anima Grenache Reserve from Barossa Valley. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, well, this is Craig's little vineyard. The Casarossa vineyard. It's got a red house on it. It's the last little vineyard right inside the town of Limbo.
Casarossa, yeah.
Casarossa, red house. There you go.
Let's go.
And he's got distinct Italian heritage that he married into. So this is very low yielding. So maximum just over a tonne. But in the last few years, I've taken the cuttings from the old vines, the old bush vines that are still, we're trying to replant them out of their own cuttings and do layer canes and what have you and keep it going. But I've taken cuttings and now we've planted a Gruyere vineyard either side of it, 1 metre by 1.5 metre plantings, single cordon, really French inspired. But the reason why I find this site so particular and so exciting is it's really central northern Burgundy. It's sloping red loams and rocks over a big white calcium shelf that covers most of the vineyard. So 3 feet underground. It's got this big sponge, this big white calcium sponge that gives you this beautiful minerality. Now this is nearly 80 days on skins in ferment. So polymerization of tannin is key. I cannot make this wine like my other Grenache. It falls to pieces. It can't handle it. It has to be really gentle, handled in really small batches. There's 100% of the stalks returned to the ferment. It's all wild yeast, and everything I make is all wild yeast ferment, naturally fermented. And even down to my white wines, my rosé and what have you, I ferment them all on bentonite clay and I clarify using cream of tartar. So I'm using minimal inputs to try and make these beautiful wines. And this, every year when it's at the peak of Yan count, racing along in ferment, the winery fills of rose petals.
Ooh, yeah.
Rose petals and strawberries, and it is just beautiful. It's so much more like Pinot Noir than any other Grenache I know.
Yeah.
And its elegance and complexity and power are all from the terroir.
It's definitely power. It's juicy. It just kind of fills the palate as well. Like the aroma, just kind of there's no holes in it.
No.
It just fills the palate. Yeah, get those kind of strawberries, but pomegranates. I feel it kind of come through. But once you finish on the length, it's like you can kind of like feel it just permeate through. nasal passages and just kind of comes through. It's just beautiful. It's
All
like,
perfumed, all layers.
yeah, like stepping up from the group. Probably these wines to this one, you can see it's next level.
And then the beautiful acid line, purity of fruit. Yeah. We only make it in the years that it gives it to us. And that's the whole thing. It's super reserve.
Okay. Let's move on to the next baby. 2021. Old Vine Shiraz Reserve. 2021. Okay, tell us about this one.
So this comes from Neldner Road, Marananga, from the Neldner family. So as Neldner as you can get. They are like Joneses out there in Maranangaville, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But they're multi-generational grape growers, and this particular site gives the most incredibly dark fruit, brooding fruit. It is what makes Marananga tick as far as I'm concerned. Again, pushing along the lines of the top wines of some of those other producers that are right in that neck of the woods. Dry grown, minimal intervention, hand-picked, small berries, intense flavours and colours. Then, 45, 50 days on skins and a really slow ferment, limited pigeage. So we're not bashing the tannin out of it. It's about slow extraction. And then 3 years in French oak. Yeah, 3 years in really, really fine-grained French oak. And then another 18 months in bottle before it's released.
You can't taste the oak. Right.
It's all got to be building blocks. Everything is about building blocks. And across the range, you won't taste dominant oak, but that wine's got the equivalent of, I think, 15 to 20% new oak in it.
Wow.
So it's there.
Yeah.
But the power of that fruit is such that it just needs underpinning.
It can handle it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and more.
Barossa brings a lot of sweetness and opulence of fruit into the berry. If you go and then put a heap of whiskey lactone oak over the top of it, it becomes too much. It becomes like cloying on the palate. Whereas I'm going drier. Everything's drier. Everything's about savoury. Everything's about line and length and food.
Yeah, this one's got, smoke, definitely like dark plums. Initial taste when I had that one, when I thought I was having the Grenache, I got these kind of like raisins on it, like this kind of Christmas pudding kind of raisins coming through. But it is savoury, but again, the oak's not in your face. It's there kind of nicely integrated into the wine. Yep. Another rich, opulent Shiraz that is undoubtedly Shiraz and Barossa.
It's a powerhouse. I love the elegance of the lighter styles, but this still has a dance on it. Still got an acidic dance on it that is just, it's in balance. I think it's going to be good for a few years yet.
Oh, beautiful. We'll probably wrap things up on that note.
Yep.
Thank you again for a deep, thoughtful, insightful chat about not just the new range, the old range, but also around the important topic around mental health or mental health in general as well. So if you want to find out more, head out to benmurraywines.com. Thank you again for joining us on the pod. As we say here, drink more, try more, learn more. Thank you.